Welcome to a new episode of Outside the Panels with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Outside the Panels. As always, I'm your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes, and joining me for this week's episode is a comic book company founder, an editor, a writer who's just had an absolutely fantastic book hit the racks. Still there now. Check out the review on comiccrusaders.shop to see what I think of it. Spoiler alert, there's quite a few stars on that one, I'm afraid. That's right. It's going to be one of those bad boys. I am, of course, talking about the super talented Charles Ardai. Charles, how's it going?
It's good. Good. You know, you're catching me in the middle of the afternoon in New York City. I know it's later where you are.
It is. It's almost wine o'clock.
Almost wine o'clock. It's always wine o'clock in New York.
Obviously, you've met my wife. That's what she says, right? Yeah.
Old drinking buddies.
All right. Okay. So, New York native, is that right?
Yes. Born, raised, never left. That's not true. I've taken trips, but, you know, I've always lived here.
Okay, cool. So, let's get the important questions out of the way. Jets or Giants?
Oh, my God. I am the worst sports fan in the world. I don't watch the Jets. I don't watch the Giants. I don't watch the Mets. I don't watch the Yankees. Everyone seeing this is going to hate me. I've never watched sports. All my life, I've been reading comic books. I'm that nerdy, geeky kid, and I don't know sports.
Well, I'm a Dolphins fan, so I try not to watch.
Oh, there you go.
So, you know, we've got that in common.
Right, exactly.
All right, excellent. So, as I alluded to, you are the founder of Hard Case Crime, a comic book company that's published by Titans, Titan Comics. How did that come about?
So Hard Case Crime is an attempt by me and my partner, Max Phillips, old friends. He's a type designer who lives in Dublin. And we loved the old paperback crime novels from the 1940s and 50s. We were both too young to read them in the 40s and 50s. We weren't born yet, but we loved them. And the question came up, we were out drinking one night and we said, why doesn't anyone publish books like this anymore? They had painted covers with beautiful women on them. The books were usually very skinny. They were like 150 pages, at most 200 pages, not these big doorstops. And they read like a house of fire. You know, these were stories with great plot hooks and crackling dialogue. And it was almost like going to the movies. And in the old days, you could get a paperback for $25, or you could get a movie ticket for $25. It was really an alternative to going to the movies. And we said, well, why doesn't that exist now? You know, a movie ticket is $7. Why don't we publish books for $7 that are like a movie night? Okay, so that's where Hard Case Crime came from. That was 20 years ago. We spent the first 3 years just trying to get anyone interested in letting us publish books like this. People said, oh my God, the covers look great, because we did these beautiful painted covers. You know, that's common on a comic book. Of course, everyone's used to painted covers. In a book, a traditional book, nowadays it's all type. It's the author's name, the title, big. And so we said, you know, let's make these books gorgeous. And people love them, but they said, this isn't going to sell enough. Like, we admire you, but it's not going to sell enough. Finally, we found a company called Dorchester Publishing. They were the predecessor to Titan. Dorchester worked with us for the first 6 years or so. And then they went out of business, very sadly, not because of us. And yes, right. Dead body, but we didn't do it. And then we hooked up with Titan Comics and Titan Books, two arms of the same company, run by Nick Landau and Vivian Chung, who are this wonderful couple. They own and run it. They also own and run the Forbidden Planet book and comic stores in the UK. They're tremendous, and they publish books that look gorgeous. And we said, we want to be in business with them. And we've been in business with them for the last decade. And the punchline, so we started out publishing just prose novels, like ink on paper, that's it, no picture, except the cover. And then about 5 years ago, Nick said, you know, we publish comics too. You like comics, you're a comic fan, I'm a comic fan. Why don't we do some Hard Case Crime comics? And I said, yeah, sure, I love comics, but crime comics have never been nearly as big as superheroes.
True.
Or, you know, video game adaptations, horror, zombies are bigger. But there is a history of crime comics. So a book like Ms. Tree, which was Max Allan Collins' groundbreaking female private
love Max Collins.
And those were great. And Max Allan Collins also did Road to Perdition, which became the Paul Newman movie. There are some wonderful crime comics. And more recently, Ed Brubaker has done Criminal with Sean Phillips and all the spinoffs. And so we said, sure, let's do some Hard Case Crime comics. And I promised Nick, I'll do one myself. I'm going to work with other authors, but I'm going to write one myself. It took me 5 years to write Gun Honey because I was so busy editing everyone else's comics. You know, Max did 2 comics for us. Krista Faust and Gary Phillips did one called Peepland. We did one.
I've seen that. I've read that.
You did? I hope you liked it. I love that.
I loved it. Thought it was great.
The director Walter Hill let us adapt 2 of his scripts. They were adapted in Europe, and we did it in English for the first time. But anyway, I dilly-dallied and didn't get Gun Honey written. And then finally I did, and showed it to the guys, and we all said, yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. And
all right.
That's the story behind...
that's the story behind Gun Honey. Right, okay, and hard case. So, if anybody has been under a rock for the last couple of weeks and has no idea what it is we're talking about, here is... Are you ready? The Gun Honey YouTube video trailer. This is what we're talking about. Hang fire for 2 seconds. There you go. That is what we're talking about. Yeah. It was the theme has a little bit of a Batman Beyond thing going on. So
a little bit, yeah. You know, I didn't do the trailer. It was cut together by someone at Titan, and she did a brilliant job. I couldn't believe how good it was. It's
really great. It sounds, you know, the book. I've looked at the book. I've reviewed it, so I know how fantastic it is. Well, how different? Because you said that you started off like with novels, yeah. How different is it writing novels as it is writing for comic books?
Oh, completely different. I found comic books much harder to write. I've written for TV also. Comic books by far are the hardest form. And why? Because unlike a novel where you can write any amount you want on any topic you want and nobody tells you when the chapter has to end, in a comic book, you can only fit so many panels on the page. You can only fit so many words in a panel. And it's a little bit more like writing a haiku where you have so many syllables and you have to fit, or writing a sonnet than writing a novel. Novel is free form. And even a movie or a television show, when I wrote for Haven, the TV show based on one of Stephen King's books for us, you had to fit within a certain number of minutes, but within that constraint, you could have 10 scenes or 1 scene and nobody told you otherwise. But in a comic, not only do you have a limit to how much you can fit on a page, but you want the interesting, exciting events to hit at the turn of a page.
Yes.
You know, I'm fussy about that. I want, if there's a big reveal, like somebody's about to get killed, I don't want to just show it at the bottom of the right-hand page. I want you to turn the right-hand page and there it slaps you in the face. And so, you know, where do you put your full pages? Where do you put your 2-page spreads? And like, you know, I remember working with another author, I won't say who it was, a very good author, right? I won't spill the beans, but the author kept putting in 2-page spreads, and it would be like page 3, page 4, 2-page spread. And I said, you can't have a page 3, page 4, 2-page spread. Page 3 is one side of a page. Page 4 is the other side of a page. That's really basic stuff. But if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's no sin. It's no shame. But that's the kind of thing you have to pay attention to. And so I found writing the comic really hard. On the other hand, I found it a lot of fun. And the reason is, for instance, when you're writing for television, the studio always comes back to you and says, I know you want to have an army come charging up a hill. You can't have an army. We can't afford an army. How about one guy with a spear? Right? And in comics, if you want to say suddenly they're in outer space and you see Jupiter floating by, that's easy. That's the easiest thing in the world. I mean,
Don't tell me Jupiter's in this book.
Harder. Well, my artist, so the artist who's drawing this is a brilliant guy in Malaysia named Angkor Keng. And if I said an army charges over a hill, I think he'd be a little pissed off as compared to one guy with a spear.
Page rate's gone up. He'll be
Exactly.
You owe me more money for this panel.
You want an army? This is going to be an army of two. But no, Ang is incredible. So the book is the story of a woman, Joanna Tan, who has reinvented herself in America after she had to flee Singapore. She grew up in Singapore. Her family was a family of criminals. And one day, her whole family, everyone but her, got blown up in an explosion. And she fled to another country and reinvented herself as a weapons expert. And her shtick is, her job is, she'll get you whatever weapon you need, where you need it, when you need it, no questions asked. And she's the expert at it. So if you say, I'm going to be in, this high security prison, and I'm going to be there on Monday at 3, and I need there to be a gun behind the toilet tank, she's the one who'll put it there for you. And the flashbacks, so the story takes place in the US, but the flashbacks go back to Singapore and Malaysia, where she grew up. And I was excited that I got to work with an artist who's actually from that part of the world, because when he draws that part of the world, it'll be authentic. So I was really excited for that reason. But then it turned out Ang is just, he's a student of the classics, people like Bernie Wrightson and Frank Frazetta, and he still does all his art freehand with a pen on a piece of board. When he sends me images of his pencils, I see the physical board in the corner. I see the ruler, and it feels so good. He's a young guy, but it feels so good to work with someone who works in the classic style, because I love that classic look.
It's funny you mentioned classic style, because looking through the art of the book, it's the characters. I'm going to sound ironic when I say this, and I don't mean it, especially when we're looking at Joanne here. The well-developed, you've got, no pun intended. You've got the older guy there with his pot belly doing his
in the opening scene, right? The old gangster.
Yeah, and then obviously you've got our heroine, and then you've got heroine, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And then the various things that she goes through from there. The other characters that pop up feel realized. They're not kind of just there for show. And what I think I like the most is the amount of detail that Ang puts in, because a lot of time for me, secondary characters can sometimes be drawn with less impact, because they're just a secondary character.
You're only going to show up for one scene. Why lavish a lot of care? Yeah, he has in issue 2 and issue 3, there are some secondary characters who come up. So we're in the prison at one point, and there's a prison guard. That could be a generic prison guard, but if you are a really good artist, you'll give that person some flavor, some character, even if the character is never going to show up again. And I think that's worth it. And Ang does that sort of thing. He also, as you say, the backgrounds, sometimes the foreground action is what I put in the script. I didn't say anything about the background. And then he turned in a page, and the ceiling of the room has all these square tiles, and all of them are in perfect perspective, and it adds so much to the scene. And I know he had to work really hard on that with the ruler and the pen, and it's worth it. So at one point in issue 4, Brooke, who's the federal agent that Joanna is forced to work with, has on a jacket. And I thought, okay, it's either a brown jacket or a black jacket, easy to draw. And Ang put in like a houndstooth pattern. So it took a ton of work to draw a crosshatch. And I said to him, this is gorgeous. Why did you do it? And he said, I just thought it would look good,
Yeah. I've billed you for it.
Yeah, exactly. No, he's such a pleasure. And, my hope is, we want to treat everyone, whether it's the cover artist or the letterer or whoever it is, we want to treat them well and pay them well and on time and all that. But nobody knows when a book like this starts, you don't know if it will be a success or come and go. We are very lucky because it has done well. It could have done 1/10 as well, and I wouldn't have been shocked. And so I went into it because you don't know, will anyone like this story? Will anybody be interested? And I'm just so grateful that thousands of people, tens of thousands of people are reading it.
I think you do yourself a massive disservice. I genuinely do. I mean this with all sincerity. When I see so many books on a weekly basis that I review for Crusaders, when I see a hard case crime book, I'm looking at it.
Oh, that's great.
Uh,
See that
and,
you are the perfect audience for me. There are people out there who will look at that and say, "Oh, that's some private eye thing, fedoras,
No,
trench coats."
no.
I'm not interested.
Well,
You know.
is Peatland anything like this book?
No.
Not at all.
It's completely different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So, for me, what makes smaller companies, and I don't mean that with any disrespect.
No, we are a smaller company.
Stand out is the fact that they've got innovators such as yourself behind them who want to push the envelope. Last week I was speaking to Charles Ardai from Scout Comics, and Scout Comics are exactly the same. They've got maybe the big hit with White Ash, but behind White Ash, there's a diverse type of book library that they've got going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Titan is Titan is, as you know, Titan is broader than just hard case crime. So they do everything from big licensed properties like Doctor Who or Blade Runner on one hand to really intriguing one-off creator-owned titles that are more esoteric, quirkier, and some of them are just wonderful.
So I suppose, casting my mind back to Peatland and parts of this, the books are totally dramatically different. Yes, dramatically is my word. Yes, I made it up. All right,
I like it. The language is called. That's
good. However, for me, it's about the emotion, right? I mean, the characters in Peatland go through some really bad stuff.
Yeah.
Joanna's already gone through some stuff, and this has defined who she is now. Do you feel that the character elements are the thing that drive hard case?
Yeah,
it's not the crime. It's not the. I mean, the noir element of this book is striking, to say the least. But it's that, as a reader, I've got to connect with that character at some point.
Absolutely, I think that's absolutely the most important thing, because you've got to care. If you don't care, you might pick up one issue because it's got a sexy cover and you enjoy it, put it on your shelf and never buy another. But if you're going to come back issue after issue, you've got to care about these characters. You've got to care. Are they going to live or die? And why do I care? And that's, in some ways, that's the difference between the best James Bond movies and the worst James Bond movies, right? They all have car chases.
Is there a bad James Bond movie?
Is there a good? Well, you know, look.
Is there a bad one? I mean, I know there's some good ones,
is there a bad one? Yes, there probably are bad ones. I mean, what's a bad one? I couldn't get through most of the Timothy Dalton ones. Maybe
that's exactly the one I was thinking of. I was thinking The Living Daylights has got to be in there.
They're not bad movies. They're entertaining, but you don't care that much, and you don't remember later what. But you know, sometimes there's a place for empty spectacle. For instance, the first James Bond movie I ever saw in a theater was Octopussy with Roger Moore. And today on the internet, you won't find much love for Roger Moore. I loved Roger Moore because I was a kid and he was silly and the movies were exciting.
It's your first James Bond, right?
It was my first James Bond.
Yeah, it's like people today tell me, oh, you know, the best Batman's Ben Affleck.
Yeah, right, exactly. And then soon it'll be the best Batman is Robert Pattinson, right?
Yeah. And I'll be like, surely Adam West, right? That's my fit.
Did you see the animated with Adam West doing the voices? The animated, that's from 5 years ago now, but it was really good.
There's two movies out there if people want to look for it. It's The Return of the Cape Crusaders.
And Two-Face, Batman meets Two-Face, Batman versus Two-Face. Yeah, and with William Shatner as Two-Face.
Yeah, big bad Bill Shatner.
So I think, you know, I'm not sorry that I saw Octopussy. I loved Octopussy as a 12-year-old kid or whatever I was. But the ones that have emotional stakes will stay with you longer. Yeah. And, you know, maybe James Bond isn't the best example, but for instance, why do people love Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade more than Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom? There are a bunch of reasons, but one of them is the relationship between Indy and his dad put emotional stakes into it. It wasn't just traps and stunts. It was something bigger than that.
No ticket. That's the reason. No ticket.
That's it.
You remember the scene? No ticket. Everyone's like, yeah.
I did like No Ticket. That was a good moment. By the way, I've been watching all the location shooting in Scotland for Indiana Jones 5, and I have to admit, however good or bad it is, I'm there. Speaking of No Ticket, I'll have a ticket. I'm going to go there. I'm a hardcore Indiana Jones fan. But I'll give you an example. I published a line of books called The Adventures of Gabriel Hunt, and those were an homage to Indiana Jones. This was probably 5 years ago. And we did it with love. And these were adventure novels about a globetrotting treasure seeker. And what it lacked, they were fun, but there was no emotional stake to it,
Yeah,
and as a result, they never quite caught on. The best hard case crime books, you really care about the characters. And so that's what I tried to do in Gun Honey. And issue 1 really just sets up the character. It introduces you to her. What does she do? When you get to issue 2 and 3 and 4, there are some twists coming. I'm not going to spoil them, but things take a very personal turn. And I think readers will be caught up in it. I hope readers get caught up in it. And the moral crisis that the main character faces, hopefully, will feel like a real, tough decision for her to make.
I totally understand where you're coming from. It's very hard to watch something or read something if you don't care about the book. I had a girlfriend who was absolutely mad keen on Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. She absolutely raved this book. She'd been to France, she'd been to the Louvre, she loved the museum. To her, it was like a trip down memory lane. Me, I just started reading this book. I got 50 pages in. I was like, you know what? I don't care. I don't care who he is. As good as people tell me this book is, it has never crossed my door since I broke up with that girl.
It's interesting. So Dan's a friend, and I like Dan, but I think you've identified the type of book that Dan writes is very much a thriller, and we tend to publish something that's very different. People say thriller, and they mean generically a crime story. To my mind, a thriller is something like Octopussy, where you get rocketed from scene to scene and the plot carries you forward. The puzzles, the mysteries, the traps. Will he live? Will he die? A little bit like the old Adam West Batman, although that was done more for comedy. But the thrills are what keep you propulsively moving forward. And there are elements of character development too, but that's not the main thing people come for. On the other hand, you could go too far in the other direction, and there are some literary novels where it's all about character development and nothing happens. And those books can be exquisitely well written, and you can't finish them because you can't read them. There's nothing interesting to keep you there. And so you want
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Just saying.
You
had something in my throat.
Frog in your throat. I read every book Dan writes. I've read all of the Robert Langdon books, but I won't tell you that Langdon as a character is a character for the ages that will live with me as a fully fleshed human being in the same way that the main characters in Graham Greene's novels live with you, right? Yeah, it's just totally a different kind of book. So, not one's better than the other, but they're different kinds of books.
Well, authors, and I suppose this is authors as well as comic book writers and artists, sometimes you have to tell a different story. Yeah. And you can look at some writers who are renowned for one type of book or one type of story, and then they go totally out of left field. Sorry, bit of a sports reference there. Totally out of left field. I mean, I spoke to Fabian Nicieza. I have to think about how he says his surname. I always get it wrong. And he's known, everyone loves him for his X-Men book, his X-Men work back in the late 80s, replacing Claremont. And of course, now he's got his own novel come out, and that's that's you, but the other way around.
Exactly. And there are others like that. Like Chris Claremont, of course, became famous for his work, and then he wrote a number of novels. I'm trying to think. Peter David. Well, but I think Peter David started as a novelist, but I may be wrong. He may have started in comics.
I think, if I remember correctly, if I check my old timers knowledge, I think he started as marketing person.
You may well be right
with Marvel before becoming. Doing a couple of guest stints on Spider-Man before getting the Hulk. From there, he's done loads of novelizations. And then he started doing novels. Yeah, Star Trek. He writes Star Trek for fun, doesn't he? So
that's right.
He loves his.
I think it's hard for people who start as novelists. I think it's very hard to write comics because you use too many words. Yeah, and you're scared of letting the art stand on its own. And one of the things I was glad about when I read the reviews of Gun Honey, obviously I'm glad if people like it, but one of the things I treasured the most was the couple of reviews that said, Ardai doesn't put too many words on the page. He lets the pictures tell the story. And of course, it's helpful when you have an artist this good because you can trust that you're in good hands. It's like if you're on a trapeze, you want the catcher to be really good. Because otherwise you're going to plummet to the floor. But
Grayson style.
So speaking of which, do you remember the Flying Wallendas? I realize we're going all over the place. The Flying Wallendas were this high wire act in the 1950s, 60s, led by a guy named Carl Wallenda, and the whole family was high wire walkers. And they died horribly. Like 5 or 6 of them fell off the wire, and Carl himself died falling off the wire. And I just read an advertisement for the Big Apple Circus here in New York, and some 10th generation Wallenda is walking the wire in the circus
Wow.
again. Can you believe it?
Cool.
Now that has nothing to do with anything we were talking about, but
It's got history. It's history.
a little history, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the next novel will be about a high wire walker.
I think that's been done. I think he knocks around with Batman a couple of times. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No, you know
Batman
your
and
stuff.
Robin, the Flying Graysons.
That's right, the Flying Graysons, and in fact, they did fall off the wire, didn't they? Right?
Fell off a trapeze. They fell off a trapeze.
Or was it trapeze? Okay, there you go. They didn't want to offend the Wallendas who might be reading.
Well, to be fair, it was 1940 when Robin made his debut, so God knows what they were thinking at that time. Right, so you're a novelist. You've written for TV. Does that therefore explain? This is my last question before we go to a break, I guess.
Okay.
When I read this book, it feels like a movie. As a compliment.
It's a good question. I think I think writing for TV or for film would help explain that. Writing for books, I don't think helps explain it, just because a lot of people write books that feel nothing like movies. But I do think hard case crime historically has had a deliberately cinematic bent. So, our notion is you could go watch Ocean's 11 or Ocean's 12 or Ocean's 13, or you could read one of our books. You could go watch Mr. and Mrs. Smith or LA Confidential or The Usual Suspects or Tarantino's Next Picture, or you could read one of our books. Our books are a good entertainment alternative to those kinds of cinematic pleasures. And so we try to entertain people in the same way that they'd be entertained if they pushed play on the DVR and there came a movie by Hitchcock, a movie by Tarantino, a movie by Brian De Palma, who wrote a book for us, a movie by Sam Fuller, who posthumously wrote a book for us. We discovered it posthumously. He didn't write it posthumously. So I think there is a good connection between hard case crime books and the movies, and hard case crime comics and the movies. Not all books are movie-like, of course, but we like to think ours are.
I just the sheer scope of what you're trying to achieve is kind of where I'm getting at. That opening panel where she's on the beach, and I know I looked at it digitally, but when the digital in fact, I think if I show it again.
Right, you got to cut into two pieces because you only see one.
So this is the credit page. So you end up with that, and then you end up with that digitally. Now, for me, I didn't mind that so much because
it works better than I thought it would.
It reminds me of James Bond.
Yeah, you can see the binoculars.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was doing. So automatically, my brain receptors are like, oh, yeah, Bond-like, And then as soon as you think Bond, you think cinema. Yeah. I know people will say, "Yeah, what about the books about Fleming and all that?" But and that's true, I suppose, to some people. But this book, it just looks grand.
Oh, that really means a lot to me. We wanted
the details you were talking about. I mean, look at that. Look at that sun deck there on that boat. You've got depth of the hot tub. You've got the cushions. You've got the shadows from the windbreakers. All of it is great.
Wait. Go back to that page. You want to know the thing I like best?
Yep.
Look at the hand of the man helping Joanna onto the boat. He's leaning on the next panel.
Yeah, look at that. So let's see if I can scoop that up.
He's leaning on the next panel. And that is the kind of thing I love. When Ang puts in little bits like that, where there are interactions between the characters in the panel, it's just a lot of fun. I love things like that. There's another one. If you go 3 or 4 pages on, I'll show you another one that I loved that he did. And this wasn't in the script. He just did this on his own because he enjoyed doing it. If you go to page 11 or so, let's see. Keep going. We've got to get her to the government agency. More. We're going to the flashback when she's in Malaysia. This next page. So she's a kid growing up, and you'll see, if you look at the bottom right panel, the smoke from the man's cigarette becomes the steam coming out of the manhole on the streets in the panel above it.
There you go. Where my cursor is, you can see that there. There's the cigarette smoke. There, look at that.
Isn't that fun?
I
love that stuff.
Yeah, it's really good. Really good. Cool. Right, we'll take a quick break for one of our fantastic adverts coming up. This one is one of our favorite adverts, and the reason I'm going to play it is we have an opportunity over on outside the panels here. Hopefully, I'm going to say hopefully, we're going to try and have a crossover coming up soon with this show about a new range of figures. All right, so check out this advert. It is the Everyone loves it. The Crisis in the Toyverse.
I love it.
Crisis in the Toyverse. I can't give you too many details out about the show we're trying to get planned. It is embargoed till after the publishing date of this pod. So I'm afraid, guys, you just have to keep checking out the UCPN for when you get the download. Excellent. All right, back to Charles and your fantastic book. One of the things I mentioned before the break was the cinematic approach there. Can you talk at all about the colorist? Because obviously it goes without saying that Ang Ho Keng's art is gorgeous. It is. There is not one single panel in there that makes me think, ugh, hurts my eyes. All of it works. All of it works. I even like the way she pulled the gun out of the bikini. I was like, really? It's a little, you know, where she keep the silencer? Was my question.
That's a good question.
But taking it the next step down.
Yeah, let's talk about colors. So the color is,
so it's Asafur Rahman.
Yeah, Asafur Rahman, and he is he's a very talented guy. He used to live in Bangladesh. Now he's in Canada, and he took Asafur's black and white inked pages and he brought them to life in a way that the black and white. I mean, actually, if you ever get the chance to see the black and white art, it's gorgeous on its own. But Asafur's colors really, and the page you're showing right now is a perfect example of this. The question was, what's this going to look like? She's driving off to a midnight assignment she has where she's got to break into a man's compound. But how do you show, you know, a person driving at night could be very boring or it can be exciting. And what he did with the taillights, the headlights, the moon, the colors, this almost felt to me like a 1980s feel, you know, and that's because of the colors.
Are you thinking Knight Rider?
I'm thinking Knight Rider. That's exactly right. You have a sexy car, you might as well have it talk to you, right?
Yeah.
And
they're getting away, Michael.
Yes, exactly. Don't let them. I can't do that accent. Where was that? Who was that? William Devane?
Yeah. It was. I can't remember his name. William. It was the doctor in St. Elsewhere.
Oh, that's it. Okay, it'll come back to me.
Guy. It was also in. Is it Small Wonder? The thing
about the baby robot, the robot. Yeah. So you know, he did the gamut here. Everything from sun-drenched beaches on page 1 to midnight prowling on page 20, and in between, he also had the challenge of making the flashback scenes look like flashbacks, so you can tell at a glance when you're in the past. That's not trivial, and we went back and forth. You know, should the characters in the flashback, in the script, you write, do this in sepia, but you don't literally want it all to be brown. You know, that's boring. So how do you get color in there, but still make it look different from the modern day, present day versions? So he did a tremendous job. And we had him, in addition to doing the colors for the interiors, he also did colors for some of the covers. The first issue cover from Ang was a lift from his beach scene, the one you showed earlier.
Yes, if you give me 2 seconds.
You'll have it, yeah.
I am absolutely, what can I say? I am the...
You're prepared.
It is like I have prepared for this, yeah.
This is great.
Just 2 seconds.
But on issues 3 and 4, so issues 1 and 2, the Ang covers are frames from inside the comic. But for issues 3 and 4, right, so that's from the scene you saw before. For issues 3 and 4, Ang drew original covers, brand new covers, and Asafur colored those. And there he brought a different coloring style, which was more three-dimensional, so that the flat art would sort of explode into 3 dimensions. And so there you have muscle contouring done entirely in colors. None of that was drawn. It was all done with colors, you know, different shades of red and brown and so on.
Well, you say 3D coloring. I don't think you can get much better than this guy.
3D coloring. Yes, well, So that's Adam Hughes. So I will tell you what I can tell you about Adam Hughes. Adam Hughes is a god. Adam Hughes is one of 2 or 3 painters working today, illustrators working today, who no matter what he paints the cover for, I'll buy it. Likewise. I don't care if I'm interested in the character. Literally, I don't care. It can be anything. It can be Wonder Woman, Catwoman, Betty and Veronica, whatever it is. If Adam Hughes paints the cover, I'll buy it because I know, if nothing else, I'm going to love the cover. And if he does the interiors too, oh my God, my head explodes.
So who's the other ones? Just out of curiosity.
Well, Alex Ross is in that category, right? Frank Cho for me is in that category.
Are you reading Fight Girls at the moment?
I'm reading Fight Girls with my teeth gritted because the reason I can't get Frank Cho to do a cover for Gun Honey is because he's too busy doing Fight Girls.
Well, it's only got a couple of issues left, and that's done.
Only a couple of. So I would love, for example, obviously, I would love to get Adam to come back for Gun Honey 2. I would love to get Frank to do it. I don't know if Alex Ross has ever done this sort of pinup art. I can't think of anything that's quite like this.
I don't know. You know, he did. Alex Ross did some painted covers for the Justice Society, the JSA book, before it got rebranded as Justice Society. So you're talking about somewhere between issue 75 through 84 or 5 when it ended. And some of those, the Cyclone one, for example, the green dress with the high slit and the long socks, the Power Girl one, as you'd expect.
I'd love to see what Alex Ross would do with this, but it's not like I know Alex Ross. I don't. He has no reason even to return my phone calls. But the truth is, neither did Adam Hughes. And I went to him and I described this, and I know he was very busy and he had many other commitments, and he took this on anyway, which I consider an act of great kindness and great generosity on his part. And I turned him loose. At one point, he said, "Do you want to see a sketch first, or just, should I just finish this?" And I said, just do whatever you want to do. I know it's going to be good. I know I'm going to love it. So I didn't see even a hint of what this was going to look like until the finished art came in, and I was blown away. And because I trust an artist like that, I trust to come up with something wonderful on his own.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's it. The guy's been around for ages drawing stuff like this. I'd also like to say that he's absolutely no relation to me. Unfortunately,
he's a very nice guy and was very decent to work with, and really an unknown character, an unknown book, and he was willing to give it a try, and I'll be forever grateful to him. Bill Sienkiewicz is another example who did a cover for us, and Robert Mcginnis. So Robert Mcginnis has painted 20 or 30 covers for my books, for the traditional books. And a few for the comic books. And he did 2 covers for Gun Honey, the one you've seen for issue 1, and there's another one coming on issue 2. What Robert Mcginnis is probably most famous for is movie posters. He painted the original James Bond movie posters with Sean Connery back in the day, some with Roger Moore as well. And his most famous cover is Audrey Hepburn with the cigarette holder and the cat on her shoulder for Breakfast at Tiffany's. Very famous poster. And so for Gun Honey 2, he painted a painting that was inspired by Audrey Hepburn with the cigarette holder and the cat. The cat's on her shoulder. There's a gun at her feet, and I just love it. I just think it's beautiful. And the wonderful thing, Mcginnis is 95 years old, and he's still painting. Just today, I saw a new painting he did that his son emailed me a photo of it, and it's gorgeous. And the idea that at 95, I'll be lucky to be getting out of bed. Realistically, I won't be getting out. At this point, 10 years dead.
At this point, I am not going to tell you what you asked me about when we scheduled this. All right, I'm not going to mention that.
Yeah, don't exactly tell me. It's my dad's 90, and I know you can be a vital 90-year-old, but the idea that you can be painting at the top of your game in your 90s is so inspiring. It makes me so happy to get to work with a giant of the field who's still going strong.
I've got to ask you a question. This is potentially a little bit controversial, so I genuinely, it's just something that kind of, I guess, popped up when we were talking about the character and some of the art and stuff. All right. When you think back to the noir crime novels that inspired Hard Case, and then you have a vibrant, curvy, sexy woman as your main protagonist. In today's, how can I put this succinctly? In today's worldview, where it seems that anybody can be offended by anything, were you worried about having such an overtly sexual character as kind of your main go-to girl, as it were?
Yeah, so my answer is no. I wasn't worried about it, and I think there
That's a short answer for a really long question.
That's right. We'll move on to the next. No, but there's a reason for it, and it's not just the obvious. The obvious is hard case crime's been around for nearly 20 years, and every one of our covers has typically has a beautiful woman on the cover. Sometimes, somewhere on the cover. I think out of 100 more or more books, maybe there's been one book that didn't have a woman on the cover. So I think that's who we are. You know, our books have the look of classic 1940s, 1950s pinup art or 1950s paperback covers, and beautiful women were one of the things you saw on those covers. So that's the simple answer. But beyond that, I find that the idea of a strong, competent, smart female character who is the best in the world at what she does, and it's not an easy thing to be the best at, and the fact that she's survived all this time and flourished is a sign of her strength. The fact that she owns her body and takes control of it and uses it in the ways she wants to. She's not doing it because anyone's telling her to. She's a sole proprietor. She runs her own operation, and she uses every tool she's got in order to succeed. And that success in some cases is survival. In some cases it's making money, whatever it is. And why shouldn't she take advantage of her appearance? It's one of the many things that she has going for her. So there are times that she finds it useful to infiltrate someplace or break in someplace or impersonate someone. And, you know, if you're Brad Pitt, you probably use your good looks too, right? So you remember the A-Team with Mr. T and Dirk Benedict, and everyone had a different strength. And Dirk Benedict was called Face. His real name, his character was Templeton Peck, but they called him Face Man. Why? Because he was incredibly handsome and he could sweet talk people. He could do what we call social engineering today. I don't think there's any reason that's, you know, offensive if it's a woman doing that, and inoffensive if it's a man. I think you can imagine any kind of character in a crime story you want, and a woman should be just as free to use her appearance as a man to get what she wants.
Great answer. For me, from my point of view, you know, the fact that, you know, she's an attractive woman is a plus. You know, remember, this is a story we're reading. You know, you don't have, you know, James Bond typically isn't an ugly guy, although I know some people aren't always a fan of Daniel Craig.
Right.
I don't know why. He's super hot, right?
I think he's pretty attractive. You know, that's my impression.
Yeah,
you know, and we've got Beefcake here too. There's Brooke, who's the male counterpart, the agent she's teamed up with. He's got a little bit of a Channing Tatum thing going.
That the guy there?
Yeah, that's the guy. I mean, he's not an ugly guy. I think he's an attractive guy. I wouldn't mind seeing him with his shirt off. We haven't done that yet, but we might.
Don't say Channing Tatum. My wife would be like, "What? Channing Tatum's on the pod?" You know? I'll tell you a quick story about Channing Tatum and my wife. It's really not that fun. But I took my kid to see the first G.I. Joe movie.
Okay.
Right? Just a brainless action movie. Watch this, whatever. And then, of course, the second one rolls around, so I took my kid to see the second one. And then about a year later, we're in a video store. My wife's like saying, "Oh, we should watch something." And I said, "What sort of thing do you fancy?" "Oh, I just want something I can watch. I don't want to think about it." And I was like, "All right, you want to get G.I. Joe 2 because Channing Tatum's in it." And she was like, "Great. I love Channing Tatum." I'm like, "Yeah, no, you do. It's great." So we buy this DVD. It's secondhand, so it costs like a couple of pounds or a couple of dollars, I guess. And I get home. Bearing in mind, I've already seen this movie. And spoiler alert, 20 minutes in, Channing Tatum gets killed.
Oh, you're a cool man. You should have brought her Magic Mike.
We have Magic Mike.
And Magic Mike 2, probably.
And the XL version. It's like why? I'm like, why do we have 3 copies of the same movie? You know,
I went in the theater. I wanted to see it larger than life. I went with my wife, and I think my wife had a great time.
Yeah. Did you go for the 3D one? Yeah.
Yeah, the 3D one, exactly. Where the spears stick out at you.
Yeah. I said to my wife, "Why do we have 3 Magic Mikes?" And she said, "Why do you have 6 Star Wars?" I was like, "Yeah, fair point."
Fair enough. You know,
fair point.
And the other thing. So you ask about the beautiful women, attractive men. You don't see that often. You don't see characters, at least in American comic books and probably British comic books also, where the protagonist is of East Asian descent. Joanna Tan's mother is from Malaysia. Her father is from Corsica. And that wasn't some kind of calculated decision that was, a bid for diversity. It was just who the character was when I dreamt her. But I'm happy to put somebody out there who's a main character, not a second banana, not a sidekick, who comes from a background that you don't see every day on the pages of comics.
Absolutely great. absolutely great. You said that you're a comic book fan.
Yes.
And we alluded to the fantastic Fight Girls by Frank Choi. So if you're offended by sexy girls,
don't read Frank Choi.
Yeah, don't read Fight Girls. The only good thing, the best thing about issue 3 is that they changed the sports pants to a swimsuit. So that tells you more about me than you need to know.
Well, I warn you, there is one graphic scene in Gun Honey issue 2. So anyone who is offended by graphic things,
I'm not. Let me just put this on my
your pull list, as they say.
Well, I didn't want to use that term when you said graphic scene. I was like, no,
right. That's walking into a trap.
Yeah.
But what were you going to ask?
Yeah. So you're a comic book fan.
Yes.
So when you say comic book fan, what
do I read?
What's your poison?
I'll tell you, my poison going back to when I was a little kid is Flash. I was a Flash guy. So I started with Barry Allen. My first issue when I was a kid, the first issue I bought from a spinner rack at a store was the issue where Flash's wife, Iris, got murdered. That's a big issue to start up.
I've got that.
Issue 275, right? I think.
I'm not. No, I haven't. I've got the one where she's dressed up as Batgirl.
That's the one. She's dressed as Batgirl at a surprise party and a costume party, and she's killed. And we think it's by this monster, this maniac named Clive Yorkin. And it turns out later that it's the reverse Flash vibrating his hand into her brain. Now, that book made me a Flash fan for life. And I went backwards and forwards. Every month I would buy the new Flash, but I would go haunt comic book stores and yard sales and everything. And I built up a collection of essentially the whole run of Barry Allen Flash. I didn't go as far as the Jay Garrick years because that's too expensive. I couldn't afford it. Yeah. But I got almost all the Barry Allen Flashes. And then I stopped at one point, but still, when I'm in a store, if I see a cool cover, I see, like the last time I was in Midtown Comics, there was Heat Wave on the cover. And I thought, I'll see what Heat Wave's up to, right? The villains. Yeah. And so I'll still buy Flash. But the truth is, what I buy mostly is the weird, dumb, gimmick pairings. So, for instance, when I saw Batman meets Elmer Fudd,
I had a great book. That is a great book.
It was great. Then I did
recently. Lee Weeks. I think it was Lee Weeks on that. Was it?
I don't even remember who it was, but I thought it was great. It was really well written. Then there was more recently. There was Elvira meets Vincent Price.
Yep.
And I thought, okay, I'll go for that. It was pretty good. It wasn't as good as Elmer Fudd, but it was pretty good.
I think to be fair, and this is no disrespect to Dynamite because I love Dynamite a lot. When I say that, I mean Vampirella and Red Sonja. I don't. There's a couple of the properties don't work for me. And I don't know what it is. Elvira's one of them.
Oh, interesting.
And Betty Page is the other.
Yeah, I flipped through a Betty Page in the store and I didn't end up buying it, so I don't know what that tells you. But I thought the art was nice, but I didn't get drawn into the story. The Elvira, I haven't read any of the other Elvira books, but I love Vincent Price, so I thought, okay, I'll buy it, and I read it. It was pretty good. I enjoyed it. There are others. I bought another thing that was some kind of team up where it was every Dynamite character in the same book. I don't remember what it was called, but it was like I don't remember.
There's been a fair few of those. A couple of years back, it was Sword of Sorrows. There's been
whatever the new one is.
Dynamite. It's Dynamite Lives. It's the zombie book, right?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I thought again the art was great, but I couldn't follow who all the characters were, and so I bought it. I paid it. They got my money, but I wasn't dying to get the next one. But I thought Elvira I liked, and then every so often there'll be some other random thing that I get into. But there isn't one character that I follow the way that I did. When I was a kid, I also followed Spider-Man. I followed Batman for a while. I would buy Justice League just because it had Flash in it, or Brave and Bold when Flash was in that. Or
I used to buy Brave and Bold because it's more hero for your book, isn't it?
There you're right. Twice. Or we remember DC Comics Presents. That was always a team up with two, and so anytime that had Flash in it, I would buy that. And then
I think I've got one issue of DC Comics Presents. It's number 19.
Okay.
You have a Flash thing. I had a Batgirl thing.
Oh well,
I bought the Flash comic because it had Batgirl on the cover, and I was like, "What's Batgirl dancing with the Flash for? What's going on there? Robin's going to kick his ass."
That's right. I wouldn't even think as a forensic scientist that Flash would be all that great. As a dancer, he's kind of a geeky guy, but somehow he got Iris to marry him. But it's funny. I remember you want the hardcore Flash flashback, so to speak. I remember reading the letters column in those old books. And by the way, sometimes if you read the name on the bottom of the letters, it ends up being someone who became a famous science fiction writer or something like that.
Jeff Johns is massive in old letter columns. Yeah. Jeff Johns. is predominantly in there for DC at some point.
Yeah. So no. I was just thinking there was one issue where Flash is preparing for a date with Iris, and he's running late, and he comes home, and it's like 1 minute till Iris shows up, and so at top super speed, he sets the table, and he pours the water, and he takes a shower, and he gets dressed, and by the time she's finished ringing the doorbell, he's ready. And the letters column person said, okay, fine, he can get dressed at super speed. He can set the table at super speed. If dinner was cooked already, he can put it out at super speed. But he can't take a shower at super speed.
Because the water goes at a
wait for the water to come out. And I thought, even all these years, so this is like 40 years later, I remember that letter. That's how much of a Flash fan I am.
I can imagine you writing a story and thinking, but the water still doesn't come out fast.
Still doesn't come out fast. Right. And I think the answer to the letter was something like, how do you know Flash didn't build a special cistern to push water out at super speed? I love comics. I absolutely love comics. And the funny thing is, what you love about comics, the classic comics, is something that is a little over the top. Yes, and today's comics are trying for something realist. So I loved Flash's Rogues Gallery because it was insane. It was the Rainbow Raider and Captain Boomerang and the Top, and these were kooky characters. And in the 60s and 70s, that's what you wanted. In the modern day, everything, you go back to Captain Cold, and now Captain Cold has a deep, dark past. And like Jeff Johns will write a Captain Cold bio issue, and you come through it, and it's like a character out of a Stephen King novel. Your heart is breaking for this character. And I think that's great. I respect it, and I enjoy those issues. But and Gun Honey is in that tradition. Gun Honey is more realistic. It's, you're supposed to actually care about these characters, and they have a realistic background. But I have to say, mostly when I read comics, I love the old goofy stuff. It's not the only thing I love, but I do love that. And I miss it. I'd love to do a Flash that, I'd love to do a 1970s era Flash story. One day I'm going to go to DC and pitch them, and I'm going to say, this is Flash versus his Rogues Gallery, and there's not an ounce of realism in it. This is what the issue I would have loved to read growing up.
Well, if old comics are your thing, you need to check out our other pod. We have a podcast called The Old Timers Comic Book Show.
Oh, great.
And it's all about comics that are at least no newer than 25 years.
That's great.
Right. So we talk about what did we do? We did a recent Spider-Man episode because of the whole Steve Ditko thing. Right. Started off amazing. The people who died that he cared about. So we did Amazing Fantasy 15, Amazing Spider-Man 121, 122. I'm a little bit kooky when it comes to stuff like this, so I picked the death of Jean DeWolf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Instead of just the obvious ones.
Yeah. Well, right. I'm kooky. I'm like, I started a whole petition about bring back Deborah Whitman as Spider-Man's true love. That's the kind of crazy kooky stuff I like. Who needs MJ?
If
crazy blonde's the one you want.
MJ's pretty good on some of the covers recently, but yeah.
We talked about covers. It's a nice little way to get in there. There you go. There's some cover galleries for you to have a look at.
Range. Yeah, I thought we were only going to have 2 or 3 covers, and then it was 4, then it was 5. And then eventually retailers came in and said, is it okay with you if we do a retail exclusive? And of course I said yes. I was very glad. And some of those came out just terrific. So in the top row, it's Bill Sienkiewicz, whose name I might be mispronouncing. It may be Sienkiewicz in the classic Polish fashion. The second is Robert Mcginnis. Third is Angkor Kang, the interior artist. Fourth is Andrea Camerini, who's in Italy and did a lovely job. The fifth is what today is called a cosplay cover, a photo cover. There's a woman on OnlyFans. She's in the top 0.5% of OnlyFans sites named Kate Max, and she's a big fan of Hard Case Crime. She reads a lot of our books, and I went to her and said, you love our books. Would you like to be on the cover? And so we've got 4 photo covers, 1 for each issue with Kate Max. The last one on this page is Adam Hughes, as you know. And then on the next page, you'll see some variants.
Let me get there.
Sure.
Because I've oops. There you go. Technology at its
best. It's sideways.
Yeah,
now it's big and sideways.
Look at me. Yeah. Right. Give me 2 seconds. I'll sort this out.
Don't worry about it. I couldn't do any better. I'm terrible with these things. But the retail exclusives are on that page. So you see Bill Sienkiewicz and Adam Hughes on the top, but on the bottom, I think the first one is a woman named Leslie Lee. I believe I may have her name wrong, and I apologize.
No, that's right. No, you're right. Leslie Lee is the...
And Warren Lowe, whose last name is I assume it's pronounced Lowe, but I'm not 100% sure. Apologies again. And then Ivan Tao. And I love them. They're beautiful. I think it'll be a smaller number of covers for the subsequent issues. Issue 1, of course, is always the one that people really want to collect. That's Kendrick Lim, who interestingly also lives in Singapore, where the heroine is from. And so I was, that's an extra special reason to enjoy having him on board. You'll see that our heroine has a cat. The cat shows up in several of our covers. We show our heroine's cat in this cover, in Faye Dalton's cover on issue 3, and in Robert Mcginnis's cover on issue 2. So we have 3 covers that show the main character's cat.
There you go. Excellent. So there you go. Gun Hunting #1 is out in stores now.
Thank you so much.
This has not whet your appetite, then
maybe it's not for you.
Yeah, it's either A, not for you, or B, you're dead.
There you go. If you're dead, your heirs can still buy copies. So the fact that you're dead, that's no problem. They can bury it with you. You're going to have a happier trip to the afterlife if you've got Gun Honey in the coffin. I think that's going to be our selling line for the next issue.
So good it'll kill you.
Good it'll kill you.
All right. Yeah. Charles, stick around until after the credits. Charles, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gun Honey #1, as I said, is out in the stores now. Go check it out. It is fantastic. If you cannot get it for whatever reason, because, comic book shops, as good as they are, can only carry so much stock, get them to reorder it from their warehouse distributor, whoever that may be nowadays in this crazy world.
Right, it used to all be Diamond. I guess it's. Yeah. I suspect it's still Diamond, but you can. And of course, if you like comics digital, you can do what you did, which is read it digitally. And the graphic novel will come out in March. So if you want to have them all collected at once, that's coming in March.
Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your other favorite shows, including Crisis in the Toyverse, the Old Timers Comic Book Show, where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. And of course, if you're into modern day stuff, you've got the No Price podcast all about Marvel and the Definitive Crusade. The last episode, Revenge, Joshua, begins with a J. Go check it out. All right. Charles. Yeah, where did I get Chris from?
I'll be Chris tomorrow.
Yeah. That's my Sunday name. Charles, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Guys, I've been joining Machine Hughes. As always, adios.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.shop, all about comic pop culture.